C60 olive oil is a popular choice for people wanting to activate their full potential. Improved sleep, faster recovery and more energy are just a few of the amazing comments received from our customers who take a spoonful a day. Make C60 oil a part of your daily routine and see what it can do for you. Activate your potential today at thec60company.com.
Hi everyone, this is Shai from Raising the Frequency in Israel, and I'm so honored and excited today. Here with me, a guest from the UK, David Icke. How are you doing?
Hello, Shai.
Just Shai, no, not the Irish, just Shai, like you would say S-H-Y, not the Irish version, Shay.
Oh,
just...
did I get your name wrong? Shai.
Yes, exactly.
Hi, gotcha.
David, it's not needless to say that I know most of your work, and not just the recent stuff you've been publishing, but I go back many years. I've started my own research roughly 12 years ago, and you were among the first ones I came across. You were already there full on. Obviously you had a not so easy way on your way to the consciousness of the masses, but I think it's all coming together nowadays in recent years, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the most encouraging things of all, because, you know, I've been doing this for decades, 30 years.
Yeah.
And in the early days, there was no one really, just the odd person who was in any way interested in this at all. And it all sounded crazy to them and to most people, and it was dismissed. But you keep going, because if you believe in something, then, you know, you don't walk away from it because, you know, things get tough and unpleasant.
Yeah.
You stick with it. And if what you say has any validity, then it will eventually be shown to be so. And what's very encouraging in recent years is the number of people who are now worldwide opening their minds to the fact that the world, reality, everything is not what they've been told it is. Because if you look at a human life, from cradle to grave, it's pretty much, if you observe it, it's a download of perception. It's a perceptual downloading program.
Yeah.
Where crucial to this are the years in the education system. I'm hearing a funny noise here.
That's it. It's all right. You still hear it?
It's not me. I just want to make clear.
All right.
It's a perceptual downloading operation, not least the education system, which is simply to get young people at the earliest age possible, and it's getting earlier, in front of an authority figure representing the perceptual reality of the state, not necessarily perceptual reality.
Yeah.
And all the way through their formative years, they are bombarded day after day after day with the state's official version of everything, official version of science, official version of medicine, all of it. And at the same time, we are being bombarded 24/7 now by the mainstream media, which takes its point of reference, its point of truth, from the same point that the education system does.
Yeah.
Then you've got people who've been through that system, or are going through that system, who have accepted it as reality, and they then impose what's known as peer pressure on anyone that doesn't want to accept it and wants to explore other explanations for things. And so it's very simple. You know, people who are born into religious families tend to become followers of that religion.
Sure.
Why? Because it's all they've basically ever heard, so it becomes their reality. And if you look at life in general, you see that this lifelong download of perception from official sources is just the same. If all you've ever heard is one version of events, then there's a very good chance that you'll accept that as reality and live your life on the basis of it and behave on the basis of it and dismiss other people on the basis of it. And this is what happens. And this is also the reason now why we're seeing this hysteria of censorship from sources like Silicon Valley, Facebook, YouTube, Google, all these different sources, because the official narrative not only gets imposed through education and media, etc., it also gets defended from challenge by censorship. And if people in the system are so terrified of this other way of looking at the world and life and reality, then if it's got no validity, then why would they be frightened of it? Exactly. Because obviously the definition of events would destroy it in debate, but they don't want to debate, they want to destroy debate.
It's like it's very similar to the arguments of those who like vaccines. Why you are so afraid of the non-vaccines? I mean, if you are vaccinated, you should be bulletproof against this disease, let's say, but actually they are still afraid from those who are not vaccinated, which is, it's a contradiction. It's a bit of absurd, I think, the situation. And it's just, for me, just another part where they force their agenda upon the masses of people. And most people are not aware of this game that's going on behind the scenes. But you know, David,
what you've raised there is very important.
Yeah, I know.
Because with the example you give of vaccines, you have this global cartel called Big Pharma, the pharmaceutical cartel, which basically pays for the American media with its adverts. I mean, the American television wouldn't exist without advertisements from the drug cartel. You've got governments and government health institutions that treat people on the basis of the pharmaceutical cartel's version of health and well-being, which is basically the scalpel or the drug, which just by coincidence happens to make them an astonishing fortune every year. But even despite that complete, basically near monopoly on what people hear and are told about vaccines and other forms of so-called healthcare, they're terrified of a few parents and researchers looking at the background to say vaccines and saying, well, hold on, there's another way of looking at this. And you see, when people are not willing to openly debate their position, but want to shut down anyone that questions their position.
And to impose their way on the others.
That tells you immediately they have no confidence in the fact that they would win the debate with their stand.
Exactly.
So, if you can't win the debate, you shut it down. And that's what political correctness is all about. It's what the suppression of vaccine information is all about. Everything, even the whole transgender arena, where children of the youngest age are having this pushed on them. I don't care how people live their lives, so long that they don't impose it on anyone else. Good luck to them. But what we're seeing in the schools increasingly is indoctrination, gender indoctrination. And if you challenge that, well, they call you a bigot and they shut you down and they silence you and they call it hate speech. Why? Because they know they can't win the debate on what they're claiming about gender in its more extreme forms that they're putting out. So what do? They shut the debate down. And That's what's going on in so many subjects.
So many subjects. I totally agree. And I think you'll be happy to know I cannot but mention it because last Thursday, just a few days back, there was the first international informed consent conference, and it was in Israel. And dozens of doctors and scientists from all around the world were invited, and it's from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. Non-stop. There were more than 1,000 people there. I mean, we were amazed that 1,000 people were brave enough to show their faces in such an event, you know, and they gave money and support, and basically, again, many doctors and scientists came from all over the world to give speeches. And some of them also just flew to Israel just to take part, you know, just to be in the audience, just to listen. And what happened from that, I think you'll be happy to know that also in other countries, they heard about this conference, this international informed consent conference. And now in Italy, they want to do it as well as other countries, because they realized we can do that too. We need to stand up. And I cannot say it, you know, I just love, you have this lecture or presentation, and maybe it's also a book, which is Human Race, Get Off Your Knees and Roar, or something like that. Can you
Yeah, Human Race, Get Off Your Knees, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So I remember correctly. And I think this is so true because we are lions. We are here, we were put here to roar, you know, not to be submissive to something. And I love this attitude, and it's what I'm trying to tell others. Go on.
What you're talking about in relation to this conference is a real basic foundation of human life,
yes.
And that is freedom
yes.
to choose.
Yes.
You see, people talk about freedom, and one definition, or one of my definitions of freedom, is the freedom to choose. Because if you break it down, freedom, you have more freedom the more choices you can make.
Yeah.
And you have less and less freedom the less choices and fewer choices that you can make.
Yeah.
And so when you're in a situation, and you know, one of the great forms of mind control is familiarity, where something's so kind of familiar, and then because it's familiar, it goes into the subconscious and you just don't question it anymore.
Yeah.
But let's question what is happening around the world, which is the enforcement of mandatory vaccination. I cannot think of many more profound definitions of fascism than for a state to insist that children and parents cannot decide for themselves whether they have vaccinations or not and what goes into their bodies. This is unbelievable fascism.
Yeah.
And again, we'll come back to what I've just said earlier, or what relates to it. They have a form of freedom in so-called democracies, which is the freedom to do what the state wants you to do. So if you in the vaccine example, if you accept what the state says and you have your children be vaccinated in all the schedule, and it's getting crazy now, it's a tidal wave of vaccination, then you have choice. You have choice to do that. This is a free country. You have choice to have your children vaccinated. Once we're there now, enough parents have started to look at this and go, well, hold on a minute. I'm having another look at this vaccination stuff. Have you seen what they're not telling us? Well, then you don't have the choice not to do what the state tells you. You only have the choice to do what it tells you. So what happens then is, instead of you having choice, a free country, mandatory vaccinations are brought in to enforce them. In simple terms, you have freedom to do what we tell you, but not freedom not to do what we tell you. And it's happening all over the world. And there's no more blatant example of it than mandatory vaccinations. And another point that you made, which is absolutely right, if vaccinations work, then why are you people frightened of non-vaccinated kids?
Yeah.
Why? My two boys weren't vaccinated, and they were not getting the diseases that their vaccinated friends were.
Yeah.
You know, we have a thing. It's a work of genius called the immune system, and
Yes.
and if the immune system is in its power, in its pomp, then it will sort almost everything.
Sure.
It's why people live any length of time at all.
Yeah.
And if you are targeting and bombarding a still developing immune system with all this extraordinary toxicity that we call vaccines, then that immune system is not going to be what it could be for the rest of that child's life. Now, if people then say, well, I'm making the choice to vaccinate anyway, well, okay, that's your choice. But don't tell me what I'm going to do and my kids what they're going to do. Thank you very much. But this is what's happening.
Yeah. You know, we can do the whole show just about vaccination or about fascism, but I would like us to go back, or at least do like a zoom out for a second. And I want you to speak about the nature of reality. And if you don't mind, to go back to stuff that you were putting out years ago and to share with the audience what you've learned from shamans in South America, from shamanism methodology from Africa, or from any indigenous culture, which obviously in recent years is being more and more erased from the face of the planet. And that's a problem for us. And who is doing that? We can speak, maybe you can speak about it. But really, I want people to understand and to realize and to open their mind and consciousness to the nature of reality. It's vast, it's multidimensional, multi-frequencies. And I think the way you wrote about it and spoke about it in recent years, it's fascinating, B, it's spot on. You know, there's not many people, white people, speaking about these sort of things. Shamans, yes, but not so much white people in English sharing this information. And by white, I don't mean white and black, like a friend showed me the other day. We are different shades of colors. There's not really white and black. It's just part of the division. So if you can share this about the nature of reality, so people will understand what is really the nature of reality. And after, I would like to connect it to synthetic biology and to the high technology that is being introduced to us now and more so in the future in order to control this nature of reality. But if you can just relate to that at first so we can move on afterwards. And I do really think it's fascinating. I learned so much from you about these sort of things. It's amazing.
Well, let's look first at why anyone would bother, any authority would bother to delete on a massive scale from circulation the nature of reality. Because you talk about societies and shamans around the world. If you look at the colonization of the world from Europe, not least from Britain, then you're looking at not just taking over countries arrogantly, called empires. You're looking at the indigenous knowledge of those countries being massively suppressed and replaced by this Western mainstream everything, as I call it, version of everything, including the nature of reality. And what they replaced that with, in terms of what we're talking about here, is a belief through mainstream science, which is funded and controlled overwhelmingly by this very cabal that I've been exposing for 30 years. They wanted to replace the idea that we are consciousness. Forget the body, that's just a vehicle for consciousness to experience this tiny band of frequency, actually called the world. We are consciousness, we are awareness. What is the true I? It is a state of awareness, a state of being aware. And what they want to replace that with is that the true I is the body, the name, and all the labels we give to it in a short period between birth and death, or what we call death. No such thing. Death of the body, yes.
Yes.
So the idea is, and the whole premise of this imposition of this fake sense of reality and fake sense of self, the I, is to get the population, the target population, to self-identify with the myopia of perception of self. That all we are is a body that goes through a cycle for a few decades and then dies. And the I, the true I, is actually all the labels we give ourselves in relation to that body and what it does, i.e. The labels of race, the labels of culture, the labels of sexuality, the labels of religion and all these things.
Yes.
And if you say to people, hello, nice to meet you, who are you? They'll give you a list of labels along those lines to tell you who they are. When all along, what they really are is a state of awareness that is having a brief experience called a human in a tiny band of frequencies that we call the world. So when people have, and called millions have now, have had what are called near-death experiences, when they leave the body, leave their eyes, but can still see, in fact, see massively in a much more expanded way.
Exactly.
When their awareness is still there, despite their body no longer being there. What they are experiencing in that out-of-body, quote, near-death state is an expression of the true I. The vehicle is just that. You know, what we call the world is a tiny band of frequency. In fact, the band of frequency that we can actually see, called visible light, is so tiny, it's laughable.
Yes.
If you look at mainstream science, it says that in terms of what exists in the universe, in terms of matter, energy, all this stuff, the electromagnetic spectrum is about 0.005% of what exists in the universe. Some say it's a bit more, but not much. Tiny. And visible light, which is the only frequency band that we can see, everything we see is within it, is a fraction of the 0.005%. And what the body does, so that we experience this reality briefly, is focus the attention of our consciousness into this band of frequency. So if you only experience and perceive through the five senses, then to you, to your perception, this tiny band of frequency will be A, everything, and B, all that you are. When in fact, it's just a point of attention, a point of observation, within infinite reality, which exists beyond it. And so when near-death experiences leave the body, when the body dies before it's revived and they return, they describe, with very, very common themes, a completely different reality to what we experience through the body. Now, what this scam has done, and it had to marginalize the knowledge of what I'm talking about that's been passed through the centuries in native communities and cultures. And that's why the colonial powers went in and basically destroyed it. A shaman friend of mine in South Africa said that the colonialists came in, they milked the minds of the shamans to see what they knew, and then basically killed them and marginalized them. And if you look at now in these countries, so much of the colonial view of the world is now their culture. They've been hijacked, basically. Yeah. So when you focus only on and self-identify only with being the body and all your labels, then what that gives you is a massive sense of limitation, of I can't, of it's not possible. I mean, we're in a situation where we're living such an illusion that we experience the world as solid and everything apart from everything else, when it's absolutely not solid at all. It's holographic, illusory, solid. And what's thrown a spanner in the works of this suppression in more recent times is the emergence of quantum physics, which has shown that if you go deep enough into what appears to be solid, it has no solidity. Yeah. Atoms are supposed to make up the solid physical world, have no solidity. Yeah. How can atoms make up a solid physical world? They don't have to, because it's not solid. Yeah. If you put on and this is a great analogy of what human life is like in terms of what I've just described. If you put on the headset in a virtual reality game, then you'll see things that appear to be solid. You'll see three-dimensional things in these holographic virtual reality games, and you watch people with the headset on reacting as if what they're seeing is real. Yeah. And yet all it is information codes being passed to their brain for them to decode into apparent reality. And they take the mask off at the end, and suddenly reality's transformed. It's not like they've been experiencing for the last half an hour. Now it's something else. That is what happens at what we call death, and that's why near-death experience a totally different reality. Now, if you put the headset on, but you know it's a headset, and you know that it's just a virtual reality experience, then you have this breadth of knowledge in terms of giving you every kind of angle that you need. You are experiencing the game, but you also know it's a game, and you know that you are different to the game. Yeah. But if you imagine you put a headset on, and that person then believes that the game is all that there is, and the headset is who they are, then the game's going to control you. The game's going to control your perceptions, thus your behavior, thus your life, because you don't have another point of observation to realize it's a game. Yeah. You think it's real. Yeah. Now the game is controlling the person through the headset. Yes. And that's precisely in theme what happens to humanity. They come into this game, this virtual reality, if you like, believe it to be real, and then the game controls their perception for life. What's happening now, this is what we talked about earlier, is people are beginning, like never before, to wake up to the fact that the reality they're experiencing is not what it appears to be, And I'm the first to say, yeah, the way we experience this reality, it appears to be solid, absolutely. Yeah. But it's not. And once people start to realize, hey, the true I is not David Icke, born in Leicester, England in 1952, and all the life story that goes with that. That's just those labels are not me. They are labels for experiences that I've had and am having. I am the consciousness having the experience. And once you realize that you're actually a point of attention within an infinite stream of consciousness, two things you realize. A, all these limitations are illusions. And two, the idea that you judge people by their race, their culture, their sexuality, whatever it is utterly insane. Because whether you are a transgender activist or a Jewish person or an Islamic person or an atheist or a middle-class American or a shaman in Africa, you are simply a point of attention in the same consciousness that everyone else is a point of attention within. We are all each other. So from this perspective, racism and all these isms, all these judgments based on labels are ridiculous. And another thing, how people allow themselves to be defined by labels and thus treat others on the basis of comparing their labels with the other person's labels. This is where divide and rule and conflict comes from. It's crazy because we are fighting with each other when we are each other. We're just having different experiences. And if we would only chill out, not trying to impose label agendas on other people, which is what it's really all about, and start to realize, hey, we're just having different experiences. Chill. I'm having this experience, you're having that experience. So therefore, as I experience this and you experience that, I don't agree with you what you think, and you don't agree with me what I think. But hey, let's have a beer, chill. It's just a different way of seeing reality. So what? This is where the problem comes. When people with certain views and beliefs based on their labels want to impose those views and beliefs on everyone else. That's where the trouble starts. I don't care what people believe, so that as long as they don't impose it on other people.
Sure.
Good luck to you. But when the imposition of that on other people starts, that's when the wars start, that's when the divisions start, and the whole of, if you break it down, the whole of this human division, divide and rule, essential to the few controlling the many, is based on different labels seeking to impose their will on other labels. This is where political correctness comes from, and all these political correct activists come from. I believe this, you must believe this. This is where censorship comes from. I believe this, you can't say what you believe, so you're going to be censored because it's different to what I believe, and therefore you must be wrong because I'm always right, the way it goes. And this is the whole foundation of it, if you look at it, comes from a complete misunderstanding of the nature of self and the nature of the I. And now, full circle to where I started, that's why they don't want us to know the nature of the true I and the nature of the reality we're experiencing, because while we're in ignorance of that, all those things essential to the few control of the many are suddenly made possible.
Almost every sentence you said, I had something to tell you. So if we were sitting now in your living room, we would probably chat and chat and chat. But that's it. I keep quiet because it's more important that you will say your point of view, which is if we understand correctly, it's our point of view if we just let go of this limited point of view we normally have. And you know, Ramana Maharshi, have you heard of Ramana Maharshi from India?
Yeah.
So he used to say, and like physicists and scientists from all over the world used to come to him and to listen to some of his satsangs. And he used to say, to ask, what happens when you sleep? So the person start to say, yeah, I dream and this. And no. What happens when you sleep, deep sleep? So people will start and think, and then they will say, nothing. Aha, nothing. So you leave everything behind, all your loved ones, and happily you go to sleep to nothingness to gain energy. Because what happens if you don't sleep? So people say, I either go mad or I'll die. Yes. So you go to nothingness to come back with a lot of energy to continue your daily life. Yes. And science already shown that the brain waves in deep sleep are the same for everyone. So we are all, it's as if we are all, in order to go to the fountain of everything, of energy, we all have to leave behind personality, body, feelings, emotions, thoughts, and all the money we collected, etc. To leave everything behind, and happily we go there, but we are not conscious while we are there, because we cannot be, because this is like the delta waves, and there it's like we all meet, but there is no me. I don't meet David there, it's just one meeting itself, and it's true for all the animals and all the plants. And this was Ramana, you know, saying this, and I really identify with what he said. And I wanted to ask you if you could again zoom out even further and tell us about what you've learned from the spirit world that the shamans used to, and still I hope speak about. Because this stuff, us, the Western people, we find it intimidating. We find it, you know, we get afraid when we we hear about spirits, spirit world, demons, different frequencies or dimensions. But first, are they real? Second, are they more or less real than this reality? And third, what's the purpose of the shaman in exploring these realms and translating it to us, to the followers, or to most of people?
Well, you know, people talk about the spirit world and they think about ghosts and things like that. But what people call the spirit world, which is the realm of consciousness, awareness, is everything outside of the realms of form like this one. You know, our consciousness is on a frequency, that level of awareness is on a frequency that couldn't interact with this reality, because the frequency of the reality is so different to the frequency of our awareness that we couldn't interact. I couldn't pick up a pencil or pick up a cup of tea, because the frequencies just would be vastly different. So we take on these vehicles called bodies, which have an outer shell which operates within the same frequency band that we wish to experience. And thus, through that frequency compatibility, we can pick up a pen and pick up a cup of tea and interact with this reality. But that's just a brief experience, and the true I, what people call spirit, and other people call other things, that leaves the body. And the great vastness of reality, existence, is in that non-quote physical state. So this is what we're experiencing here is massively the exception and not the rule. And this spirit is consciousness, awareness thus, what we think we need a body for to experience, like we need eyes and we need tongues and what have you, that's just part of the experiencing of this reality. But when your consciousness leaves the body, as enormous, endless numbers of near-death experiences have said, they can still see, they can still hear.
Yeah.
All these things, all these senses are still there because they are the senses of consciousness, along with so much else that we're not aware of in the confines and the myopia of the body. And this infinity of awareness is the realm of what I call all possibility. You know, when people talk about, quote, God as all that is, has been, and ever can be, from the five sense perspective, that's ridiculous and impossible, because you can't be all that is, has been, and ever can be. But if you are all possibility, of course you are all those things, and of course you have to be all those things, or you wouldn't be all possibility.
Yeah.
So within all possibility, all things are possible. So in the great infinity of awareness, there are infinite worlds, infinite realms of experience. What do they refer to it in the Bible in symbolic terms? Many mansions in my Father's house and all that stuff. So we are just one experience called human within an infinity of experience, and this is a real band of frequency that's extremely dense, low frequency, slow vibration.
Yeah.
And so it feels like treacle going through treacle. But when you leave it at what we call death, completely different.
If I would to edit this talk, I would put now Bill Hicks' quote, you know, from one of his shows about us being in a consciousness experiencing itself, which is a great quote. I don't remember it exactly, but it's a good one.
Well, Bill Hicks was a very funny comedian in America. He died in 1993 at an early age, in his 30s. And from an early age in his life, he used to take psychoactive drugs, which gave him experience of realms beyond this band of frequency we call the human world.
Yeah.
And he realized that there is no death. And he realized that what we think is so real is actually just an illusion. I mean, shamans and such like throughout history, in all the different cultures, not just one,
Yes.
have talked about the illusory nature or the Maya of physical reality. It's a constant theme, and it only started getting suppressed and marginalized when this process happened I talked about earlier, where the colonial countries of Europe started imposing this new sense of reality upon the world through colonization. And Bill Hicks, as part of a joke, was saying words to the effect of, we're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively.
Yes.
There's no such thing as death. Life is just a dream, and we are the imagination of ourselves.
Yes.
And when you break it down, I'm just writing a book at the moment in which I'm going into this whole area of reality and how it relates to the world that we're experiencing.
Excellent.
Things happening. When you break it down, how reality works and how consciousness, thought, emotion creates and generates experience. So we really are creating our own reality. But of course, that which is behind all this cabal doesn't want us to know that. It wants us to believe that everything that happens to us is somehow random chance. When something happens we don't like, we've just been unlucky. But when you see how it works, you realize that our thoughts, our attitudes, our perceptions become our experienced reality, and it's quite simple to explain how that works.
Mm-hmm.
So when Bill Hicks talked there about we are the imagination of ourselves, we absolutely are. But like I say, we're not supposed to know that, because then we can take control of our lives back. If you have a self-identity of little me, I've got no power, you will live a little me, apparently powerless life all the way through. Not because you are powerless, not because you are limited, not because you are little me, but because you believe you are.
Yeah.
And I have this phrase, what you believe you perceive, and what you perceive you experience. And I've gone into in a number of my books, I'm going even deeper into it in this one, this feedback loop between perception, self-identity, and experienced reality. Once people realize that feedback loop and how it works, they can realize that if they change their perception and change their sense of self, they'll change their experience. It's what happened to me, and my goodness, it's happening to more and more people now, as more and more people go through this process of literally awakening. And what is that? What is awakening? People talk about awakening. What is it? It's awakening from the program. It's awakening from the perceptual program that is downloaded to us from cradle to bloody grave, through the education system and the media and peer pressure and science and all that stuff. And then people say, so you're saying then that there's this vast conspiracy and all these people know about it and all these journalists know about it and all these teachers know about it and that's what's going on? No. Well, first of all, that could never work and without coming out. And B, it's not necessary. What you do, well, I'll tell you just a quick story. I did a lot of research from about just after the mid-90s to about 2003, on both sides of the Atlantic, into mind control and how mind control worked. And you come across this process widely used in the mind control projects, where they mind control people to mind control others.
Yes.
This is what they do.
Yes.
And that is what is happening to humanity. You see, where do journalists come from? They've gone through the same system of programming that everyone else has.
Yeah.
Where do teachers come from? They've gone through the same. Where do scientists come from? Same. Where doctors come from? Same. So basically, you're given a perceptual program to believe in. You're tested on it in exams, see if you've accepted it or not. You are attacked if you don't accept it, etc., etc. And all around you, whether it's people who wrote the newspaper you're reading, or doing the news you're watching, or the doctor you visit, or the science textbook, all of those people have been through the same download as you have. So therefore, they all confirm to each other that the download is real, especially if you can marginalize people who are saying, actually, the download is nonsense. Yeah. And because of this, you get teachers giving the download to kids day after day after day because they accepted the download themselves. They're not doing it to kids because they want to be malevolent. Sure. They're doing it because they believe that's the right thing to do. Sure. Same with, well, some many journalists are malevolent, I know from experience, but a lot of them, most of them, are not doing it for malevolence. They're just reporting the world from their perception of the world, which is the perception they've downloaded like everyone else through their lives. And when people like me come along who actually say, you know, it's all a nonsense, then by definition, I must be mad or bad or both, because I am questioning their download perception of reality, which of course can't be wrong because everyone else thinks it. And you see how it's just, you can see it how the confirmation from every angle that what you've accepted to be reality from the state is reality. It's a hypnotist show. It's a hypnotist show. That's what life is. And we can break that hypnotic spell anytime we want.
One thing, I mean, what you said is very much true, and I see it also in my daily life, when I communicate with most people. But one thing brings this question to my head, and it's been bugging me since some time now, and I think it's a good opportunity to pass the question on to you.
Okay.
Right. Let's say 15 years ago, I was a good, jolly hippie. And I sang songs about love and happiness and joy and God and the creation and beauty and so on and so forth. Now, if I follow quantum physics or just some of the ideas that you expressed there, theoretically at least, if I continue to sing songs about love, joy, happiness, etc., my reality should be theoretically, hypothetically, should be made of joy, happiness, good health, a lot of God in my life, and everything is good. On the other hand, I should, and again theoretically, I should wake up to the nature of reality, which is a lie. I mean, what the government is telling me is a lie, and I'm like trying to rebel against the government, singing songs about happiness and joy. But what I see in the hippie community, and that's why I gave an example about myself, because I come from there, and I still a hippie in my soul, in my being I'm a hippie. I don't like all this forceful stuff upon me. But what I see is that some people do think and believe that if they only do that, singing songs and thinking and meditating and praying for the good, this harmful stuff and forceful, vaccinations, fluoridation, 5G, which we'll speak about soon, all this will not harm them because they cover themselves with joy and happiness. And I'm like, no, I think it doesn't work together. You need to do this. You need to pray to God, and you need to be happy and joyful because it gives you good health. But on the other hand, you must wake up to the nature, to the real or true nature of reality, so you could A, educate yourself, B, educate the next generation, which I think it's the most important job we have nowadays, is to pass on real knowledge to our kids, to the next generation. Otherwise, the state will swallow them, because that's their agenda. And I'm thinking, what is right here? Who is right? Maybe both, maybe one. I mean, are the hippie right? Are those who share conspiracy stories, and again, real, like you said the other day, conspiracy realist, not theorist, all right? So I use this as an example. What is right here to do? How can one combine the two sides, still be jolly and happy, and expose himself to all these nasty pieces of information that cause some fear in people, which we will talk about that also in a second.
Well, I've noticed through the decades, observing what was once called the New Age movement, term not used so much these days, but it's, kind of arena that you're just talking about.
Yeah.
They can be very resistant to people like me and the information that is uncovered about how the world's manipulated, because it goes under the term negative. And they say we must let go of fear, and we mustn't be negative. Where you go next is, okay, define the term negative. Is it negative to be in ignorance of how you're being manipulated? Because ignorance is never positive. Being knowledgeable about the way you're manipulated, and thus being able to stop the manipulation and to see through it, is extremely positive.
Yes.
But what I see is so much denial and avoidance of not addressing things that you'd rather not be true. I'd rather the stuff that I put out not be true. I wish it wasn't. Fortunately,
I agree.
It is. So we have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And you know, this is an area that I've kind of observed a lot.
Oh, so you specialized in that because of feedbacks and comments you got over the years.
Yeah. First of all, if you tell me that we need to let go of fear, and I agree, then why are you saying that this information shouldn't be put out? Because it will frighten people. If you've let go of fear, then it shouldn't frighten you, should it? It shouldn't in any way intimidate you. If your frequency, and your, if you like, energetic consciousness security is strong enough, then you can dance with the devil if you like.
Yeah.
But not become it. You can deal with very unpleasant information that you'd rather not be true, but people need to know about it so that they can stop being manipulated through it. And you can still hold your frequency. You can still hold your joy. You can still hold your so-called positive emotions and perceptions, as they call it. Without getting pulled in. You know, I don't get pulled into all the horrors that I often uncover.
Yeah.
I uncover them and I communicate them, but I don't get pulled into the vibe, so it pulls me down into that state.
Which again, yes, you can do, and I mean, frankly, have you for even limited amounts of times? Have you? Because I remember myself when I came across first time in this information, which can drag you down. I felt like I was dragged down. I was pulled down to this information, and people around me told me, look what it's doing to you. But I knew that I'm going to go through it. So something in me was stronger than that, you know. But I'm asking you, have you felt like you've been pulled down?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is why, if you look at my books, I don't talk about the conspiracy in any of the books without talking about the nature of reality.
Yeah.
Because once you start to realize the nature of the true I, you realize the power we have to control our own experience, to control our own state of perception and feeling, and do these things that can be, you know, dealing with highly unpleasant information without getting pulled into it.
Yeah.
Because in the end, no matter what happens, and when all's said and done, we are still an infinite, eternal expression of consciousness. This is just an experience. There'll be another one along eventually. And the other side of this is that I see the people that call themselves spiritual but are in denial of that's negative and all that.
The negative, yes.
They say, people have got to wake up, right? Okay. So do you think it might help that happen if we address what's keeping them asleep? What do you think? Do you think that people are more likely to awaken from the program when we expose A, that it is a program of perceptual download, and B, who's doing it, how they're doing it and to what end. Do you think that might just aid people waking up from the program that you say they need to wake up from, though you're not calling it a program? But of course. So on one side, you've got people have to wake up, but they won't address what's keeping them asleep.
Yeah.
And why? Because when they go there, they have to go into areas they don't really want to go into, and so they find an excuse not to, and they call it negative. There's nothing negative about people becoming aware of what they're dealing with, aware of how they're manipulated, and thus how they can stop it happening. There's nothing but positive there. But to reach that point, we have to realize that there's some very unpleasant people doing some very unpleasant things that people need to become aware of. You know, they don't call them secret societies just because it's a nice name. They call them secret societies because what goes on in there must remain secret, because they don't want the population to know the secrets of how the population is controlled, directed, and manipulated. So how positive can you get in revealing to people what those secrets are? I mean, it's crazy. And again, in the end, it's denial and not really wanting to go there. I've met many people in the New Age movement years ago who, by no means all, by the way, but many, who were constantly telling people they had to let go of fear while themselves were consumed by it. You know, there is this other thing which is very important, and that's the difference between a concept and a being, and a thought and a knowing. The difference between thinking and knowing is completely different. And you know, you can sing songs and say all the right things because it's a concept, but it's not a being. And if it's not coming from the being, it will not affect the feedback loop because it's external to the being. It's just a concept. If you only think it on that conceptual, intellectual level, that's not going to have the power of knowing it. And the difference between thinking and knowing is very obvious. When you look at where they come from, they don't come from the same place. No. We think with the brain. I'm thinking. We know with the heart. When people say, I know, look where their hands go. I know, I just know. I intuitively know. Well, how do you know? I don't know, I just know. I know. And this is trying to work it out. This is all working on the intellectual level. And you know, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Oh, you know, I know. And this knowing is the being. That's where the power comes from, that really impacts on this feedback loop and changes your reality when you genuinely open your heart, because the heart vortex in the center of the chest in the human energetic field is our connection with the vastly expanded consciousness that we really are, if we would only remember. And I, again, have observed people in this spiritual arena who talk about the heart, opening the heart and coming from the heart, when their hearts are basically slammed shut. You can see that in their behavior and the way they treat people. But when this really opens, really you don't even have to sing songs and mantras and stuff. It's when this opens, the connection is established, re-established, and that starts to impact on everything, what you attract, your power to make things happen, all of it. Which is also, it's true meditation. I mean, you just are. You don't have to do something in order to be. You just as is. And it is. Yeah. And of course, if you look again at the way the system works, the programming system, it's to move people from here to here. the whole education, media, information source system is all here, particularly the left side of the brain, left side of the brain, not even the right side of the brain, the left side of the brain, which is all about seeing the world as everything apart from everything else, etc. Seeing things as individual parts, where the right brain connects dots and sees the whole. In that area of the brain where everything seems apart from everything else, and this world seems to be all there is, that is where the education system and the media is both located and downloads the population with that sense of reality. So this starts to shut because this becomes the dominant thing. What does your head tell you? What does your heart tell you? They're very different. What they tell you are very different. And the thing about knowing is this tries to work everything out. And so it wants chapter and verse, it wants, all the ins and outs and T's crossed and I's dotted. Whereas this just knows. It's like this sees the next turn in the river.
Yeah.
This sees the river from the source to the sea.
Oh, this just swim. Oh.
It's just, this is where true knowledge comes from. Knowledge, knowing. This is where intellectual knowledge comes from, much of which is simply not true, but it's what the state wants you to believe is true. If people go here and stop this being dominant in their perception of everything, then they'll realize that there is a whole new explanation for life that this was not aware of.
In this sort of cases, normally I use prove me try and prove me that you love your mom. Exactly.
Yeah.
You love your mom, you cannot prove it. And
that's another thing. See, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
What I've just explained there.
You can use it, by the way. If you want, you can use it.
Everything. If you can't prove it, can I taste it, see it, touch it, hear it? Well, it exists then.
Yeah.
I can't exist. That's where this works.
Yeah.
This is beyond that. And that's why this is where true innate knowledge is, knowing, which is way ahead of anything processed here.
Few times already, I used your example I heard from you, about people telling you that why you're so negative, etc., with all the information you put out. And you were telling them, hang on, if we speak and behind you I see a great storm is coming, do you want me to tell you about it so you have time to run away or to prepare a shelter or to tell your kids to protect your family? Or you prefer me not to say anything because you may be afraid. Now, anyway, when the storm comes, you'll be afraid. So at least I give you some time in advance to prepare.
Exactly. Well, that's basically what we've been talking about.
Yes.
It's people saying, in effect, that if someone's in front of you with their head in the sand and their bum in the air, and there's a tornado coming towards them, that it's much better not to tell them, because when you tell them there's a tornado coming, they'll be frightened. It's much better not to tell them, and then they'll suddenly out of nowhere be spinning 50 feet in the air. And I guess by then they won't be frightened, they'll be terrified. But it's much better than warning them so they can take evasive action. This is the crazy nature of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And of course, what you have, this is hilarious because physician heal thyself and all that. You get people who say that, oh, this is all negative. You mustn't be negative, and they're often the same people that say we're all going to die from climate change, and they terrify kids into believing that the world's going to end before the end of their natural life, and that's okay. That's not being negative. And But if that was true and something did need to be done to avoid that, then it would be positive to tell people so that we do something to avoid it. Unfortunately, this human-caused climate change scenario is a hoax that's been long in the making from this cabal to justify global centralization of power over every area of people's lives, to exploit the manufactured excuse that we're all going to die from climate change. And again, the programming, it's all programming. You now have, from the smallest age, youngest age, kids being bombarded in school about climate change and human-caused climate change. Climate's always changed. Human-caused climate change, and that it's a catastrophe and there's going to be an extinction. What do they call themselves? Extinction Rebellion. And the media are bombarding people with the same thing, to the point where that's all they ever hear. At the same time, those who are challenging the official explanation of human-caused climate change are called climate deniers and are abused and labeled and censored. So everywhere you look, you're seeing this same recurring blueprint of programming perception and then protecting that programming from other views. And so climate change is just a perfect example. And there are so many things that this cabal wants to impose upon humanity globally that the hysteria about climate change allows them to do. And without that hysteria, they wouldn't be able to do. It's very, very important that people realize that they're being hoaxed on this. And thankfully, nothing like the majority yet in terms of the mainstream arena, but more and more people are beginning to realize that they're being hoaxed.
You know,
to deny or to demonize carbon dioxide, without which we really all would be dead. And there would be no vegetation, no trees, none of it, is insane. But you know, a great form, one of the foundation forms of mind control and perceptual control is repetition. The Nazis knew this. Keep repeating the same lie and people will believe it. Why? Because it's all they hear. We're back to the same spot again and again, no matter what area we're talking about. Because there is a blueprint, there is a technique system which is applied to everything. And that's why you find it everywhere you look.
Yeah. You know, I've been using, again, few quotes. Like, I have a Facebook group. It's called the Community of Raising the Frequency. And there's like a couple of pictures there since a couple of years now. It says everything is upside down. Doctors destroy health. Judges destroy justice, etc. I don't remember all the sentences.
Universities destroy education. And all the
governments destroy liberty or freedom.
But that's the point. The reason everything is literally inverted in terms of the truth is because we cannot be allowed to know the truth in any area, or the game starts to fail, starts to unravel. And so we've been talking here, about reality and self-identity. So there you have a crucial, central inversion that instead of the truth that we are awareness, infinite awareness, on an eternal journey of experience, we are instead inversion, just a lump of meat that is a series of labels that's here for a short time, that came out of nowhere and disappears into nowhere. And that's who we are. either that or there's a God, an angry God that wants to impose its will on everybody. Either way, the fact that we are in control of our own experience, if only we realized how it worked, is marginalized by both. Either everything's random accidents, or you've got to do what God tells you. And of course, the fella in the frock, whether it's Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, any of them, he knows what God wants. So do what I tell you, and you'll be doing what God wants. I mean, this is the old recurring theme of the ages, and it's all about hiding a simple, basic truth. Our perceptions, our attitudes become our experienced reality. Thus, when they change, it changes. They don't want us to know that, because that gives us control instead of them.
Which brings me, I mean, before that, I will say, I would like to book another talk with you already. I say in advance, because we cannot cover everything. And sure, yes, people now can go to your website or your YouTube channel and see a lot of videos you've done over the years. But given we are in 2019, soon 2020, we are up to date with everything, which brings me to the next subject, which obviously it's 5G and this grid of control that is being implemented in so many countries nowadays. So there's few points I would like you to relate to. A, 5G in general. B, what its real purpose, given what we spoke up to now, you know, which I would like this to be combined, our freedom and our consciousness, and what's the purpose of 5G. And also, eventually, if you can come to it, speak about the role of maybe Israeli high-tech companies, not just Israelis, because obviously there's Chinese and American and English, but some people are talking about Israeli tech companies, and if you can share from your knowledge about that, that will be great as well.
Well, again, if knowledge is kept from us of how the body works, how the mind works, how the brain works, etc., then things can be brought in and introduced around us without us seeing their real, the real reason it's happening. And so I have this phrase, know the outcome and you'll see the journey. Once you know what the outcome of where we're being taken, you can see the journey towards it happening day after day after day. And the outcome, and not too far in the future, I mean, some of these crazes in Silicon Valley are using a quite common year of 2030, which so many lines kind of cross there. If you look at what they're saying is that they want to be connecting the human brain to artificial intelligence by 2030. You've got the United Nations Agenda 2030, which wishes to transform global society using overwhelmingly the excuse of human-caused climate change. And then you've got the Extinction Rebellion people and such like in what I call the climate cult, who are saying that we have a period to save the world. And that period they're claiming takes us to 2030. So all lines start to meet at 2030. And what they want is a situation where the world is enveloped globally by a smart grid. This is why almost everything that comes out now, and almost not even technology, but concepts, ways of doing things, are invariably called smart. because this smart word is describing elements, and there are endless of them, of the smart grid. And that is based on the internet, which was created as a result of the Pentagon, and particularly an organization called DARPA, which was developed on the Pentagon.
Yeah.
And if they created it, then it doesn't have the best interests of humanity at heart. Now, there are many, many great things about the internet. And what they're doing now is trying to remove them and leave only the things that they really want from the internet. And that's the ability for mass surveillance and for connecting all technology, your car, your television, your phone, all of it, and so much more besides. This is where they've got this concept of the Internet of Things, where all these gadgets, technologies, etc., are connected to the internet. And therefore, who controls the internet controls all those technologies. And to connect the human brain to artificial intelligence, and this is what people like Ray Kurzweil, the Google executive, has long talked about. He gives the year of 2030. And, you know, I've talked a lot in this chat about perception. If there's a few of you and you want to control the many, you can only do it by controlling the perception of the many. You can't do it physically. You can in a small area, but you can't do it globally. It's too many people and too few of you. Now, they want to be able to do it centrally via AI connected to the human brain. They can't do that yet. They've had to control information to control perception. So where do perceptions come from? They come from information received. Anything from the newspaper to the 9 o'clock news to a Facebook post to a personal experience. That's how we form our perceptions, from information received. Yeah. So they've set out to control that, so therefore they control perception. This next stage I'm talking about now is basically the end game. It's to go from controlling information to impact upon perception to people getting their perceptions direct via connections to artificial intelligence to the human brain. So artificial intelligence...
Hang on, some problem in the connection. I don't know if you can hear me.
Intelligence becomes the human brain.
David, you breaking. David, hang on.
Quotes that have been in my books are the fact that once the...
David, hang on a second. You're breaking up, David. Hang on a second. Can you hear me? Can you disconnect and reconnect again? David?
Yeah, hello.
Oh, good. Now, if you...
through this connection of the human brain to artificial intelligence is to control directly, but they perception directly, but they can't do that. They have to do it by controlling information. But the end game is to go to the next stage, which is to not only control perception by controlling information, but to have perception come directly to the human brain from artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence becomes the human mind and emotional responses. People like Ray Kurzweil, this Google executive, has not just talked about 2030, he's said quite openly that once the connection is made to artificial intelligence, then AI will do more and more human thinking until human thinking as we currently know it will be no more, quite open on. And you say, well, why would he be so open? Because of the sales pitch, the selling point. The selling point is if we connect to AI, we'll become superhuman. But that's the idea. The idea is we become subhuman and posthuman, and basically
transhuman.
Computer terminals on this cabal's internet. So all this smart technology is designed to actually be one massive global grid, also connected into the human mind. And to do that, to make that grid work, they need communication power of at least 5G, and that's why 5G is being introduced without any independent testing by the telecommunications industry. There's an exchange on Capitol Hill between a senator called Blumenthal and the representatives of the telecommunication giants, in which he asks how much money they have spent on independent testing into the effects, health and psychological too, of 5G, and they said none. Because if it was independently tested, and it has been by some people outside the industry, then it would never be allowed because of its effect on the body and the mind. And this is, again, why we need to understand reality, to understand the true consequences and nature of things like 5G. The brain operates by processing information and communicating with the body systems electrically, electromagnetically, and through frequency. Anything that impacts upon the harmony and balance of those communications is going to have mental, emotional, and, quote, physical consequences. And so when you have something as powerful as 5G operating within the frequency band that it does, a frequency band that is used by the American law enforcement, quote, stroke military, to send out frequencies to scatter crowds, because the skin, which is an antenna, the body's an antenna, decodes those frequencies into the feeling that the skin is on fire, and thus people scatter to get away from the frequency. That's what they're doing now, today. And this is the same band of frequency that we're talking about that 5G works on. And because 5G doesn't pass through dense objects very well, then they're seeking to put small transmitter boxes all the way down your street, outside your child's bedroom, everywhere that they want this grid to be, because this will be the communication system of the smart grid that I'm talking about. Also, they're putting up satellites all the time to beam Wi-Fi 5G to every inch of the planet. If they're going to have a global smart grid, as I'm describing, they need to have access to that grid on every inch of the planet. The only way you're going to achieve that is from satellite, which is why they're putting them up there all the time. And the key company that's doing it is SpaceX, which should call it SmartX. SpaceX, which is owned by, well, at least in theory, by certainly run by, again in theory, Elon Musk. Elon Musk is the same guy who came out and said AI could be the end of humanity, and then starts a company called Neuralink to connect computers to the human brain. Yeah. And his SpaceX is putting up the rockets that are taking the satellites to beam 5G and Wi-Fi to every inch of the planet. So either he's very, very bewildered, Elon Musk, or he's lying to us. So what we're then looking at is
No, you're breaking up. You're breaking up. Can you again disconnect and reconnect? Hang on a second, hang on. Hang on. I can't hear you. Wait. I can't hear you. Wait.
Yeah.
David, wait. Hang on, David.
Television decodes those frequencies and reassembles them in a form where the pictures appear on the screen, or at least appear to. I think the brain's involved in even decoding that.
Listen, so, David, but again, the line was bad in the last 3 sentences, so I couldn't hear you. I don't know if it's something deliberate done by someone.
No.
Or...
So where do you start again? I'm going to have to start coming around to a finish.
Sure. I know.
Where do you want me to start again?
After Elon Musk, after SpaceX,
Okay. So, one thing that's not talked about enough in regard to 5G, even by those who are exposing it, is the ability it gives for implanting thought, perception, into the minds of the population. If you think about television, what they call analog television, it takes images, it transforms them into frequencies, it broadcasts those frequencies from transmission towers, and the television decodes those frequencies back into a form of picture on the screen. So you can broadcast information quite blatantly in the form of frequency, which then can be decoded into words, pictures, whatever. Now they can do that through the human brain. I say they're doing it all the time already, which is to broadcast thoughts, perceptions within the frequency band of human brain activity. And then the brain will decode that information and it will appear to be the person's own thoughts. This is a technology that's well known. They've been doing this for a long time. I was reading extensively about this decades ago. That's how it goes back.
Yeah.
And so once you are within this band of frequency called 5G, with its particular power and particular frequency, there are endless ways that the human body can be affected negatively, that the human psychology can be affected by scrambling the brain's communication systems and the body's communication systems, but also to implant perceptions into the brains of the population, even to the point where they see things that aren't there.
Yeah. You know, there's few things about 5G which are not spoken enough, I think. I mean, you mentioned the 5G and you related to it as if it's only the millimeter waves, and then they have to put a lot of transmitters, like every 100 meters or 150 meters or 50 meters, whatever. But the way I see it, there's few other aspects to it. It's the sub-gigahertz. I mean, the 700 to 900 megahertz band of frequency. This is like radar system. It can do 3D mapping of houses, etc. I mean, they've been using it for decades now. And this is something, I mean, most people and most of the media is talking about millimeter waves, but I think it's a diversion from what is really coming, and it's the sub-gigahertz. This is one thing very important, and it's not spoken enough about.
The potential of 5G for surveillance and all these other things is limitless. And I saw a story maybe about a week ago, that China is developing 6G.
Yeah.
So you can see where this is going.
And also facial recognition cameras and all this equipment, which is new to us. I mean, they've been piloting it in China, some of it in India, some of it in our countries. And I do know for a fact that they're already implementing 5G in many places since few years now, but they're not telling us. And I'm thinking they are lying to us again and again and again, and they are doing it happily as if it's nothing to do with them, as if it's not their life. And I'm talking about the government workers, the government so-called experts, which is the way you explained it before at the beginning of the talk is excellent, because they've been also programmed not to notice their programming, and they're just passing it on to us.
The number of people that actually have to know full-blown what's happening and why is very small.
But when I do tell people, they call me conspiracy theorist, you know. But actually, I tell them, listen, if I'm a conspiracy theorist, you wait a couple of years down the line, and then you will remember this guy, this weirdo that came and spoke with you, and you think, hang on, how did he know what he was saying back then? And I think, or I'll ask you, how much time you reckon we have to change, to flip the tables, you know? Can you give us an estimate?
In terms of what we're talking about, you know, we've got until around 2030 when this thing is supposed to be full blown. And there's another implication of significance in terms of 2030. And that is that so many young people today who are, in my view, the most perceptually targeted generation, certainly of modern times, and you know, because of the technology, probably any time that we know about. They will be the adults when this is supposed to come in full blown, and that's why they're targeting the kids now with programming and the indoctrination and the addiction to technology, so that they will go along with it when that time comes. So we have that period to highlight to people what this really means, as opposed to what we're told it means. You know, you'll look at the media, and they will focus on the fact that you'll be able to download a movie in seconds. You know, how we managed to survive doing it a bit slower before, I don't know. So we desperately need to download a movie in seconds and have our brains fried at the same time. But that doesn't matter, because we had to watch the movie a few minutes quicker. You know, it's crazy but again, the indoctrination of the whole technology arena is such now that you literally do have a mass addiction to technology, where the technology is the controller of the person and not the other way around. I don't do this because I have to. I don't do this because of any other reason than this information has to circulate as widely as possible, so that people can have the chance to see that the world that they're being told about is not the one that they're actually living in.
But you know, I don't think we have up to 2030, because even there, I think we're being lied to. I think we have a couple of years max, because once it will be installed in various countries. I mean, already there's 2, 3, 4G, which creating havoc everywhere, and people don't think it's the radiation, but we all know how many side effects the radiation has. So adding to this soup, the 5G equipment, the LED streetlights, etc., there's so many aspects to it. I don't think we have up to 2030. I think our window is very short to do something, because once it's up, once people are more programmed, they won't be even able to think for themselves. They won't be able to act. So I think we have...
Yeah, well, when I say 2030, I mean, obviously that's the year they're given, but the progression to do that, it's not just going to happen in 2030.
Exactly.
The progression is happening now.
Exactly.
And it's just planned to become more and more intense. But there's another aspect of this as well, which goes back to personal frequency. If you can raise your own frequency by your own perceptions and absolutely self-identity, self-identifying on a knowing level, not just an intellectual, conceptual level, that we are a consciousness having an experience, and the labels are just the experiences, then these frequencies will have a much less impact upon people in that state than they will on those that are in I am my labels mode, because that's a lower frequency. Why? Because it's a more limited sense of self expresses itself as a more limited frequency. The more you expand your sense of self, the more you expand your and quicken your frequency. So there are things that we can do to mitigate this purely by mitigating the impact of our perceptions on ourselves, and that's why there are no downsides to awakening to the true self. There's only on multiple levels.
Yes. Listen, we are going to finish in a second, but just a quick word, if you know, and if not, we'll keep it for the next talk, about the Israeli high-tech companies regarding 5G and the infrastructure of control. And I'm talking now just about high-tech. Don't go to other areas of research.
Well, there is a very big concentration of power in Israel in terms of this whole smart grid technology, and it's been systematically done. And this is not a conspiracy theory. This is Benjamin Netanyahu. I've just published a book recently called The Trigger, and I do a chapter on this. And all I'm doing in one part of the chapter is quoting what Netanyahu has said word for word to high-tech conferences, to APAC in America, etc., about this. And it's all centered on this Beersheba complex, which of course is a military complex. And it's very much one of the global centers, there are others of course, of this whole smart grid emerging technology. I've heard that Israel is not going to have 5G. I don't believe that.
No, it's happening big time here.
They want control of the Israeli population as much as they want control of any other population. So it's going to be everywhere.
Absolutely.
But certainly, Beersheba is a major global center. And that's why you have the research and development centers of all these Silicon Valley giants all around that Beersheba center, because it's meant to be a hub for the smart grid. Right,
David, it's been a much better pleasure than any other videos I've watched, because it happened to be that we can talk in private like that. Thank you very much.
Pleasure, mate.
Yes, thank you very much for everything, and hopefully we'll catch up and we'll do another talk.
I've enjoyed it. It's really good.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent. Me too. If you can send me a link to your book or any links that you want me to put in the description, and just to say, I will put this video up on YouTube, but also I already started, because it may be that my YouTube channel will be removed by YouTube very soon. So I already started a new channel in Brighton. It's Mike Adams Natural News video channel platform. So I already started there. So I will put this talk both in YouTube and there, and see who wins.
Okay.
Yes. Thanks a lot, mate. All the best. It's been a real pleasure.
Don't forget. Bye.
Excellent. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.